Okay, so as COVID-19 gripped the world, countries needed to find a way to process returning expats and do it fast. For most countries, the solution was hotel quarantine, but as us Australians know all too well, the system has many flaws. For more, let's bring in Dr. Zivit, who's a culture and leadership expert and the CEO of Different Thinking. Good to have you here with us. How are you?
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So maybe just a brief part of your background to begin. What have you been working on over the past year or two exactly?
So what we're doing at Different Thinking is really helping leadership teams reduce risks and increase success by unlocking the potential people, culture and innovation. And part of it is really helping leadership teams understand how to change their decision-making processes to optimize results.
Yeah, interesting. So did you see over the past 12 months, obviously in the introduction there, we talk about COVID-19, a lot of leaders and managers needed to step up. What did you see in terms of how leaders dealt with things and the challenges they had to work through?
Thank you. So first of all, I need to explain, Adrian.
Of course, go for it.
I do not know those leadership teams that decide on the quarantine or COVID.
Of course.
Having said that, we are all as individuals are biased, and every team is prone to leadership biases and decision making.
Sure.
And so the tricky thing is that we can't see our own biases, but others can.
Right.
So let me share with you a couple of examples of biases that may have occurred on the way. The one is the risky shift. So this happens when the team, the leadership team, decides on a course of action that is more extreme than what they would have decided if they had to make this decision as individuals.
Right.
For example, potentially the July North Melbourne hard lockdown on those towers, right? The question is, as individuals, would they have made the same decisions? The last hard lockdown on Victoria started with a cluster in relatively concentrated area of 13 people. Yet the entire Victoria, which is larger than 200,000 square kilometers, went into hard lockdown. Rural areas, remote areas. The question is, as individuals, would they have made the same decision?
Right.
Another one is called Wysiati, which we all fall into all the time. Our brain keeps on telling us what you see is all there is. Okay. So imagine to yourself leaders build stories and make decisions based on the information they have at hand, often forgetting to ask what are we missing, what's not there, right? I'll give you an example potentially. The last breakout happened in the Holiday Inn due to ventilation, right? Now, what we know from the media is that engineers were called to audit what they called the hot hotels, where the infected people are, but haven't been called to audit the cold hotels where the travelers were housed. In one of the interviews, they said, we thought that both of them were audited. Well, you can't think, you have to remember every report that you receive, right, has so many biases on the way.
Of course, yeah.
People analyze the information, they decided on the result, they decided what to put here, what conclusions. So the leaders, as leaders, we must keep on asking ourselves, what is it that we're missing?
Do you think then, and of course you don't know, but when you analyze leaders and how they make decisions, does it appear to you that they don't take into consideration their biases, or at least they don't publicly state them in a way, if that sort of makes sense?
We are not aware of our own biases.
So that's the problem.
Yes, that's part of the problem.
So then why are we not aware? And then how can we become more aware in your experience?
We're not, well, there are ways to make leaders aware. Like we have diagnostic tools that we actually diagnose, and then we work with those leaders on explaining to them what biases they are taking and how they can tweak the decision making in order to change and have optimal decisions. But there are also other influences. And when we are under stress, that's even becoming worse.
Can you give us an example then of someone you've worked with, obviously not their name, but just a bias that you explain to them, and then how you explain how you can remove that bias? Can you give us sort of one example of what that would look like?
Sorry, let's take, for example, groupthink. Okay, this happens to us more commonly than we think, because when we thrive to get into agreement, we then don't look for other options right? So now it's normal because it really feels much more comfortable to be in agreement than live in a conflict with our teams. And the organizational culture often kicks in as well and influences us. So there are things that you can do, right? First of all, and this is something that, by the way, we did very well in Australia. And if you compare where in COVID situation, Australia rather than other countries, one of the things is ask experts, look at the data, science. I mean, we did very well. Our leaders, countries that are in problems or where their leaders didn't really listen to.
One in particular. We won't name names.
Bleach is not good for health. Another thing is make sure that we have cognitive diversity on the team. Now, it's not just diversity, it's cognitive diversity. It's not enough to bring people that are diverse if you bring people that think like you. Right? And the one that I keep on telling leaders is, I'm sure you've seen it before, right? They say, okay, this is the problem, or ask the question, and then they say what they think, and now they open the discussion. That creates dysfunctions.
Of course. This is a fascinating topic. We'll have to leave it there, but just to finish, in terms of different thinking with what you're doing, how can we learn more, and how do you think you're helping leadership teams out there, would you say?
So we're helping leadership teams in managing people, their culture, decision-making, ethics, innovation with different ways. How they can contact us: website, Twitter, LinkedIn.
What's the website, just so we have that as well? What's
Different Thinking with one T in the middle. .com.au.
Thank you so much for coming
Pleasure.
in. That was fascinating. We'll try and get you on the show, because this is something we don't know too much about. I think we're learning more about it, so we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll talk soon.